Hello there. Today I have brought this second chapter from the first flight book of grade 10, where I'll be briefly talking about or briefly telling you about this chapter named Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. And this chapter is basically prepared in such a way so that you can quickly have a revision of this whole chapter. I'm not going to vividly explain the whole chapter. It's briefly I'm going to touch a few parts and remind you of what you have already done. And I'll also be explaining few of the parts and the important areas from where generally CBSE asks question. So this is the chapter Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. So as we get into this chapter, as we plunge into this chapter, the first thing first that you need to remember or that you need to understand is about the apartheid system. Now what is apartheid? It's a political system that separates people according to their race, right? Over here, why is this term or why is this been discussed? Because apartheid was a system or a policy that was there in South Africa for a long period of time, which Nelson Mandela he includes in this chapter. So once when we come there, I'll be talking a little more about apartheid, but then you need to remember what is apartheid policy or what is apartheid system that was there in South Africa. So you need to remember this part, that where people are separated based on their race, right? So this is one important point which was there in the initial stage of the chapter. Next, you see over here there is a brief description about the inauguration ceremony which took place in the amphitheater in Pretoria, right? And where 140 countries leaders they came to witness that, and there is where Nelson Mandela had quoted a very important statement, which became world famous. And the quotation was or the quoted words were like this: never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another. So he quoted this, and it is also given in the chapter. We will talk about this. These are the things that you need to learn and keep it in your mind while you are framing an answer related to a question or questions that are being asked in your board paper. You should be able to immediately recall these points. Now we will move on into the chapter, where you see we already know that 10th May dawned bright and clear, because that was the day of inauguration ceremony that was held as Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. So that was a day of history. It is been read by people. It is been understood by people that why it is called a historical day on the face of South Africa. Why? Because after a long rule of white supremacy, the country had become free from the white supremacy, and Nelson Mandela was the first black president to take oath over there, and there he quoted so many things. He spoke about so many things, and that's what we are going to check into the chapter. Briefly about the first and second paragraph, if you see, the inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders in South Africa. So it was the largest gathering. South Africa so far had never witnessed such a gathering for the past more than 200 to 300 years, as there was this white supremacy who was ruling over it. But then when the whole world came to know that now South Africa is been freed by the white supremacy, everyone, all the leaders, world leaders, they came to South Africa to congratulate Nelson Mandela on the achievement of freedom. Alright, and this whole program or this whole inauguration ceremony was held in the sandstone amphitheater formed by Union buildings in Pretoria. So the place where it was held in sandstone amphitheater, named as to be or known as to be Union buildings, and it is in Pretoria, right? And over here he briefly talks about white supremacy, who had actually ruled over them for a long period of time. All right, and he also says that installation, why this inauguration is been held, because it was the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Now why non-racial? Because they were the victims of apartheid system. The South Africans were the victims of apartheid system. So therefore now it is a non-racial government which is been framed or formed by the National Congress Party of South Africa. And nextly, Nelson Mandela says that he was not the only one. There were other people also who accompanied him to the podium. Now, what is the podium? Podium is that desk which is kept in front of a speaker who is standing and speaking. So there were these three people, those who were there. One of them was his daughter, whose name was Janani. All right. Apart from that, there was this first sworn deputy president and the second sworn deputy president. We will quickly move on to the important thing that Nelson Mandela had said. These are exactly what he said on the day of inauguration. Apart from this, there are many other things that were said, but it is not given in the chapter, so we will focus on this. This is that part. Today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Why newborn liberty? Because now they were liberated. So far they were being suppressed by the white supremacy, by the whites, and now they are being liberated. Now no one will be suppressing them anymore, right? So he quotes this: out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country for what is, after all, common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. Here, by saying this, you see, number one, what we need to note or quote is this, that extraordinary human disaster. Now, why extraordinary human disaster? Because this kind of disaster, or the kind of unruliness that was portrayed or that was depicted by the British or the white supremacy, was never expected, and it never happened in any part of the world. And it kept on prolonging, and it took so long for them to attain this freedom. They actually created a difference based on the skin color. So that is why he is telling extraordinary human disaster. Plus, he is also saying in the at the end of the second paragraph, if you can see, of our country, of what is after all a common victory. Now, why does he use this term common? For victory, for justice, for peace, for human dignity. He uses this because this is the birthright of every human being, whether you are born in South Africa or whether you are born in any part of the world. These are the few things, or these are the few aspects of human being which is there right from the time you are born, and no other person can take away this from you. If they are taking it, then they are the ones who are actually trying to rule over someone. So therefore he says that the victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity is a common one. That's why you see the leaders from across the globe had come to witness this ceremony, because everyone believed that everyone should live a life with peace and with human dignity. So therefore he quotes this, and he also thanks the distinguished guests, those who had come from different parts of the world. And then he says that we have at last achieved our political emancipation. Now, what is emancipation? Freedom from restriction. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. So what was the suffering that they had to bear all these years of white supremacy staying in their country? Was this, that continued bondage of poverty. They were all in poverty. They were below the poverty line. They did not have enough money to spend upon themselves, or to have best education, or to wear the best clothes, or to eat the best food that they always desire. Deprivation, they were, since all these things were taken from them, their peace was taken from them, their dignity was taken from them. So Nelson Mandela quotes or says deprivation, suffering, they were all suffering because of the white supremacy. Suffering, gender and other discrimination, there was gender discrimination also. And then he says, never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. So Nelson Mandela, he says that never shall anyone or any community should be able to do the same what the white supremacy had done with them for the past 200 plus years or 300 years. And he says that the sun which has come out, or the sun which has rose into the sky, the sun of freedom, the sun where you see there will be justice, there will be peace, and all the people of Africa will live a life of dignity. That sun which has come up onto the sky will never set again. And he says, God bless Africa, right? Now next we go on to the first paragraph. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets. In this paragraph, basically he is talking about, how the ceremony was held, how the ceremony was beautified, and he also talks about the generals, the police officers, those who not very far or not very long ago, those who had actually arrested Nelson Mandela. All right, in the past, when Nelson Mandela rose as a freedom fighter, so they were caught by the same general, those who were saluting him at this point of time. So he also says that he has not forgotten those days when the same generals used to come and arrest him, or used to call him that you are a person who is breaking the law. But then today was the day where these same general are saluting him, and they are also becoming, or they have also become, a part of that independent South Africa. All right, so this was this in that. Now in the next paragraph, that means this one, you see Nelson Mandela spoke about two national anthems. One is Nkosi Sikelel I Africa, which was sung at the time when the white supremacy was there, but their actual national anthem is Thy Stem. And over here you see Nelson Mandela quotes that people they do not know the words or the lyrics of this national anthem, but he says that soon they will learn that. Why? Because now this is the national anthem which is going to be sung by the people of South Africa. So if you can ever get a chance, you can listen to the national anthem of South Africa. You will find that Thy Stem is the one which is being sung by the people of Republic of Africa. Alright, now on the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed with the sense of history. In the first decade of 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, so there was some war, like how we have movements over here, the Khilafat movement and the Dandi March. So these are the different timelines, or the different phases through which India has gone through, Quit India movement, which can be considered as to be a timeline. And we can say that if we go down to the history of what you call Dandi March, so you will know that actually I am talking about that year. So therefore over here Nelson Mandela quotes Anglo-Boer War to tell the time, he is talking about which time period. Alright, so he very interestingly quotes Anglo-Boer War, and then he adds or he says that before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. Now, very interestingly, if all of you have noticed, or if you have read through the chapter very carefully, you will see that people itself is a plural word. But then Nelson Mandela is time and again, or you will find throughout the chapter, that Nelson Mandela is using this word peoples. He is adding S, or S is being added into this chapter. Why is it so? Because over here Nelson Mandela is talking about different type of people. Now what are different type of people? The whites, the blacks, the browns. Alright, so Nelson Mandela is talking about different group of people. So therefore he is telling people. Over here he is talking about the people, those who were discriminated based on their skin color, based on their religion. So therefore you see Nelson Mandela very interestingly writes over here, or says over here, peoples. Okay, he is not saying people, but then he is actually meaning the different types of people who went through this apartheid system, went through the brutality of the white supremacy. Okay, and then he says about this, the structure they created formed the basic of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies in the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognizes the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of the color of their skin. So the government which is framed now this government is the government who is not going to take decisions or do things, or the policies won't be applied based on the skin color of the people or based on the religion of the people. It is a democratic country now, and rule for one will remain rule for everyone, is what is been said by Nelson Mandela in this. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people. Over here, you see Nelson Mandela, he talks about how this day, how are we experiencing this day, the day which we are witnessing today. It has not just come all of a sudden. They all had to work, and they had to fight against the prevailing system, and the system which is not the one which was just established, the system which was there for hundreds and hundreds of years. All right, so therefore Nelson Mandela says that thousands of people have actually struggled. The thousands of people had actually fought for this day, or to see the free South Africa. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. Now, you see, this is an important point. This is an important aspect of the chapter. The sum of all those African patriots. There may be a question that why does Nelson Mandela say that he is the sum of all those African patriots? It's because of these patriots. Actually, why did he say so? It is because of these patriots who had actually fought for the freedom of the country, fought for the betterment of the people of South Africa, and from whom Nelson Mandela has learned all these things, has learned that if we have to attain freedom, then we'll have to stand against the supremacy and stand against the system which is there. If we do not sacrifice, if we get into our comfort zone of relaxed living and trying to take whatever is being given to us, we will be suffering and we will be living like slaves. We will never be able to do things as per our wish, as per our dignity. So therefore Nelson Mandela, he says that whatever Nelson Mandela is today is because of those people who actually fought for the freedom of the country. That long and the noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them, and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. So over here it's an old English. Wrath is an old English, and it is termed as to be achieved. All right. So Nelson Mandela, he says that he is feeling bad because there were so many men and women, those who had sacrificed their love, those who have sacrificed their life, those who had actually sacrificed their life, and today they are not alive to see what their sacrifice has brought to that nation for whom they had actually day and night walked. All right, so he is feeling sad for them, but then at the same time he feels glad that it was those sacrifices, it was those moments which were understood by Nelson Mandela and people like Nelson Mandela, and because of that, because they followed them, because they honored them, because they understood the meaning of true freedom, that is why today they achieved the freedom. They learned those things from them only. Alright, so next in the next paragraph, if you see, the policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting, very important paragraph, a very important portion of the chapter, where often question comes that long lasting or deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. What does Nelson Mandela mean by saying this? Now over here you see Nelson Mandela, he says that all of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. Now what is this profound hurt? Time and again they were being said good, not good, they were being said bad, and they were restricted from entering various areas. In spite of them being the citizens of their country, they had restrictions on visiting different places. They had restrictions on doing things which every people should be allowed to do. Say for example, they were not allowed to visit or go to cinema theaters. All right, so why? Because they were dark skinned people and those places were made for the white skinned people. So you see over here he quotes that and then he says that profound hurt. So they used to feel that they are being hurt or they are being neglected, and their dignity is not being appreciated by the white men. So therefore he quotes over here profound hurt. All right, and he also says that which has actually created a deep and lasting wound in the people of South Africa. It is quite obvious if someone is being hated and hated so miserably, that person is definitely going to feel hurt, right? So and it was not only that only one person was hated, it was this whole black people, those who were hated by the whites. So therefore he says profound hurt. And then in the rest of the paragraph he talks about those 6 people who had actually sacrificed their life, and Nelson Mandela learnt a lot from them. And then he says that men of such extraordinary what? Extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity, that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depth of operation. Now, why these people were created, or why there were people who wanted to fight for the freedom no matter whatever the consequences are, whatever the result, I mean they knew the result is freedom. They knew that free country is what should be the result of it. And what exactly Nelson Mandela is trying to say is this, that extraordinary courage, extraordinary wisdom and generosity, how it was developed in them, because they were oppressed time and again. Every now and then they were being oppressed by the white supremacy. Hence this character, the character that they had developed, it was this character of courage, wisdom and generosity. And you see what Nelson Mandela quotes next: perhaps it requires such depth of operation to create such heights of character. Now these people were heights of character. What kind of character? In spite of such treatment, they still were generous enough. They had the wisdom, they also had the courage to fight against the wrong, and they had the wisdom to understand that if they keep on fighting against the wrong that were happening to them, once upon a time or one day or the other they are going to attain freedom. All right. And generosity, why? Because they knew that people need to be generous, the people need to help each other. In order to attain freedom, they need to help each other to understand the meaning of freedom, to understand that why should they be courageous against the system which was there and which was not good for them. This system was not good for them as well as their country. Now Nelson Mandela, he says that my country is rich in minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamond. It's very important. You need to remember this. You need to remember these lines. All right. Now Nelson Mandela, he talks about it is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned that meaning of courage. Time and again I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. Now Nelson Mandela, very importantly, he says that here is where he learned the meaning of courage. Now what is courage as per Nelson Mandela? It is there later in this paragraph, and he says that he had seen, or he has seen people, those who risk their life because of an idea. And what was that idea? The idea was to attain freedom. All right. The idea was to chase the white supremacy away from their country. And he had witnessed men and women, those who sacrificed, those who were ready to sacrifice their life for the freedom of their country. And then he says, I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Question may come from this area. What is courage as per Nelson Mandela? You will have to, at that point of time, straight away write this, that as per Nelson Mandela, courage was not the absence of freedom, but the triumph over it. And you can also add this line, the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So beyond fear also there is a life. Beyond fear also people can go. Now people, they know that if I am afraid, that means I am not going to attain the freedom that I am looking for, because freedom is on the other side of my courage. If I am afraid, I'll never be able to attain that freedom. So therefore, I know the consequences, what is going to happen to me, but I am not bothered. Even if I die, I am not bothered, because my death may bring freedom to the generations that are going to come, to the people, those who are going to live after me. All right. So therefore, they were not afraid of being betrayed or being tortured. They were not at all afraid of that, because they knew on the other side freedom was there. So now next, Nelson Mandela, he talks about one important aspect of human being, and he speaks in a very expressive way, where he talks about love which is already there in human being. It is an innate tendency which is there in a child right from the time he or she is born. But hatred is something which is been inscribed or imprinted into the heart of the human being. And here is where you see Nelson Mandela, he says that people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to a human heart than its opposite, even in the grimmest time in the prison. And then he gives an example of the time when he spent in the jail. He was there in the jail for about 28 to 30 years, and there is where he found that though the police men, those who were there in the jail, they were following orders, but there was still some police people who used to show some kind of courtesy to them, some kind of love to them. So there is where he learned that love is something which is already there, no matter how much of hatred is there in their heart. But then somehow, or at some point, their love used to peep out from through the hatred that they used to have. So there he says that man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So love is something can be hidden, can be covered by hatred, but it cannot be extinguished. That does not mean that there is no love left in that human being, or there is no love which he or she cannot express. Yes, for the time being, it has been covered by hatred, it has been painted by hatred, painted black by hatred, but if time comes, that will peep out and that will come out. So therefore, he used this term extinguish. It will never diminish. It is something which is already there in human. In life, every man has twin obligation. Now he comes to another important aspect. You see, obligation, when he talks about obligation, is the duty. It's a duty of a person towards the society, towards the family. So he speaks about twin obligation. One obligation is towards the family. Now when we talk about the family, we have our parents, we have our brothers and sisters, we have our spouse, right? So this is one obligation, that there is a duty of, like me being a human being, I have my duty towards my parent, I have my duty towards my brothers and sisters, I have my duty towards my wife, or I have my duty towards my husband if I am a lady. So he talks about the obligation as one towards the family, and the other obligation is towards the country, right? Now when he says this, he says about the country. Now what are our obligations towards the country? We have to see, or we will have to be such that we do not destroy the public property. We should not see that people are breaking the laws, breaking the rules. So that is an obligation towards the country. A simple example if I have to give you, like say suppose if you are traveling from one place to the another by train. Now what is your obligation? You should buy a ticket, right? So this is how you show your obligation towards the country, towards the nation. How or why? Because you see, if you pay for the ticket, based on the amount that is being collected from you and many other people, you see the whole railway system around the country will go on. But then if everyone thinks that no, I want to travel free, then what happens is that they are moving away from the obligation that they have towards their country, and hence what will happen, the nation will not grow. We are in our way, maybe it is so small, but then we are trying to hinder the progress of the country. So therefore he means to say that the obligation that is there towards the country is like this. All right, in a civil and human society, each man is abide to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. Now inclination and ability means, you see, everyone who is born in that country or in any country has these two obligations. Now someone may choose, or someone may be inclined, means towards the obligation of family more than that of the country. That means he is not outlaw, or he is not the person who is not abiding by the constitution of the country. He is more inclined towards the obligation of the family than the obligation towards the country. So there can be various types of people in a country, but then he or she should know that we have two obligations, and as per our ability we should be obliged to the family as well as to the country. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. You see, here is where again he talks about the apartheid system which was there because of the skin color. You see, Nelson Mandela was unable to fulfill the obligation. Now by saying this, he is not only talking about himself, he is also talking about the black men and women of South Africa who were hindered from the obligations that were supposed to be put forward by the South African people, South African black people. All right. So in South Africa, a man of color who in South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. Now you see what were the consequences if someone would go against the white supremacy. They were punished or isolated. They would have been kept isolated, means away from the rest of the world. They would be kept in an isolated place. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. Now over here he very interestingly uses the word twilight. Now twilight is actually that portion or part of the day where it's not fully bright or it's not fully dark also, right? So you see over here, why does he use this? He uses this to tell that the people of South Africa, the South Africans, they knew that if they protest they will be free, but then in order to protest they have to undergo lots of trouble. All right, they have to also understand that they may be put into the jail, they may be beaten very badly, or they may be ripped from the family. So here he very interestingly used this twilight, means the South African people were in such a stage where they could see the freedom or they could understand the freedom, but at the same time they also had the fright, or they were also afraid that if they are somehow caught by the white supremacy or by the police people, they will be ripped away from their family or they will be isolated from there. So they were in such a position where they were not fully into the darkness, at the same time they were not fully into the brighter side of the society. Now because of that, you see, they developed that the characters that which is been spoken by Nelson Mandela just a few paragraphs ago. So you see a character of rebellion. They would rebel against the system which would not let them live freely, which would not let them move freely. Okay, so I did not in the beginning chose to place my people above my family. Very very true thing. If me as a human being, or we as a human being, what we will do, we will choose family first and then the nation. So Nelson Mandela also had the same kind of thought until the obligations actually were hindered when he wanted to do something for his own people, you see. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, as a brother, as a father, and a husband. So there is where Nelson Mandela learned that this is something which not only I am experiencing, but all the people, all the South African black people are experiencing the same. All right, and he tells over here that he was not born with the hunger to be free. He was born free. He was born free, but because of the prevailing policies and the system that was there, he started to understand that he is not free to move freely in the country, to eat freely in the country, to talk freely in the country, which was South Africa. So he quotes over here that he was not born with the hunger to be free, but I was born free, free in every way that I could know, free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast millies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow moving bulls, as long as I obeyed my father. Now, as how much till when he had these freedom? As long as he obeyed his father and abided by the customs of his tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. So why he says illusion? What he learned in his childhood, that freedom is like this, where he can run wherever he wants, he can eat anything that he wants, he can wear anything that he wants. But then when he grew up, that one, when he became adult, he said that freedom was an illusion, something which is not true, something that appears to be real but it is not true. When I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. The transitory freedom, it's an important word, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night. Now, why transitory freedom? Because the freedom that he got when he was student, that same freedom was not observed by him, or was not achieved by him, or he was unable to achieve that kind of freedom when he became an adult and he wanted to do for his family, he wanted to do for his son, he wanted to do for his wife, he wanted to do for his parents. He was unable to do that. I yearned for the basic of honorable freedom, basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. And then he says that this is a freedom which everyone should get, and they should not be objected or obstructed from the freedom that should be there for every human being or every South African in South Africa. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger of my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. It was this desire for freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life. So you see, very interestingly, he uses this word called animated. You see, when he started to realize that it is not only the experience of mine that I am unable to live a free life, when he learned that it is not only me who is suffering through this, there are hundreds and thousands of people who all are suffering from the same feeling, then is where he said, or he quoted, that the hunger for freedom, which was just restricted to his family, had become greater hunger for freedom for the whole nation. And this is where he joined the National Congress Party, because he knew that if he is there with this party, he will be able to attain that freedom. Alright, so this is this, and then this paragraph is all about this only. I am no more virtuous of self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedom. So he again speaks about freedom, that freedom was not at all enjoyed by them and by the people of South Africa. Now, this is an important paragraph. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated. Oppressor means like people like Nelson Mandela, they should be liberated. Liberated means they should be lifted from that standard of living to a standard which is known as to be the basic standard or the basic lifestyle of the people. But then he adds on to that also, check what he says. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom. So it is very important part, or a very important lesson for everyone to understand, that under no circumstances we should take away the freedom of the other. Yes, if someone says that stealing is a freedom for me, then of course that is wrong. All right, or not living a disciplined life is a freedom for him. That means if you are not leading a disciplined life, that means you are breaking the laws. So if that is what freedom according to that person, then it is wrong. Then in the book of laws, he is considered to be a prisoner, or he is considered to be a sinner. But then if a person who is not able to live a life of dignity, alright, who is not able to live a life of liberty, then there is where the freedom is been curtailed. So Nelson Mandela says this, that prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom. If someone is taking someone else's freedom, that means the other person is a bad person, or other person is trying to curtail the basic rights of another human being. Just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor, very importantly said, by the oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. Both of them are to be liberated, and both of them are actually the prisoner of hatred. Alright, so saying this, you see the chapter comes to an end. Thank you. I hope you have understood the chapter, and you will be able to read this chapter and write the questions related to this chapter. Thank you.